Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LeanTossup Call of Duty League podcast. It's champs time, guys. This is it. This is the basically the final, technically Activision event of the season. There is more COD left after this, but to talk about this week's COD, we're joined with a special guest, well known to this show, and of course our co-host CDLMetrics. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, yeah. Insane that we've already reached the end of the CDL season, as it were. But yeah, we still have the Esports World Cup to look forward to next month. We'll definitely be talking about that come August. But yeah, Champs is here. It feels like the most interesting Champs that we've had so far in CDL history, at least. So yeah, excited to talk about it as always, and excited to have Doug on. Doug, how are you doing?
Yes.
I am, yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, I do. You're saying that. I am wondering. I wonder. I'd have to go back to look at the other champs to see. It does feel like a very interesting champs. But I feel like by this time in the year, every year we're like, yeah, I don't know, like throughout this year, for example, we've had the four teams that have seemed very strong, but champs is the one where it's finally like, okay, only one team can win. Who's actually gonna show up when it counts the most? And so that's what's most interesting to me is okay, all these teams we've been snoozing all year, saying, oh yeah, they get to Atlanta gets to the finals every time, but now it's time. If Atlanta comes in fifth, nobody's gonna care that they did well all year. So yeah, I love champs time. It's the best time of the year.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for it too. And in ceremonial preparation for champs, you can see that some of the teams have been grayed out. That's a nice little touch there on the slide deck. So yeah, shout out for that. All right, moving on. News of the week: the subliners won. They did it. Not only did they win, but they lost 0-3 to Atlanta in the first round. Came back all the way to beat them 4-2. Not just win, but cover the spread as well. Fun fact: it was actually the only best of seven series that made it 6 games. Everything else was under five, which is an insane stat, but here we are. And yeah, you can see their record there, 10-1 in hardpoint. This team is absolutely on fire on hardpoint all weekend long. That one loss to Atlanta in that first round. Search and Destroy 4-4 cooled off a bit, but 5-3 solidly in control. Other placements, obviously, so this was the first time since Major 1 that the top four was not some combination of FaZe, Toronto, New York, Optic. Optic, of course, being eliminated in the first round losers bracket. He was able to sneak in there. Obviously, 5th to 6th Seattle and 7th and 8th Miami and Vegas. And that's actually basically your champs. That's basically that. Optic basically replacing Vegas Legion. That's the champs lineup, and that was also basically your Major 4 lineup. Anybody have any thoughts about this tournament?
I thought it was really interesting, just mostly because we had a new team win. That is a big deal. And yeah, now we have each of the top four teams holding a major championship trophy this year. But yeah, New York, I would say their big bugaboo this year has been hardpoint. They've been a solid hardpoint team, but closer to league average than what Optic and FaZe and Toronto have showed. But yeah, a couple weekends ago, they were clearly the best hardpoint team in the game, ending on a 10-game win streak. You mentioned it, Robert. Their first series versus Atlanta did not go well, but after that, it was basically flawless from them. So yeah, good to see them improve in that mode just ahead of champs. And then I think the other big takeaway was like, who's going to qualify for champs? Who's going to get those last couple spots? And no one saw LAG beating Toronto in round one, but that happened. And then LAG went on to win their round two match, and it was basically very clear after a couple days. Okay, yeah, LAG earned their spot. Unfortunately, Vegas were on the wrong side of that. Ravens had to play Toronto in losers round one. A lot of unpredictable happened, but it was still very entertaining, to say the least. But yeah, Doug, do you have anything else to add on Major 4?
Yeah, I will say I didn't get to watch it much or any of this major, which is disappointing for sure. There's a wedding that weekend, and so I was keeping track of the scores obviously, but I didn't get to watch much of it. And I will say I think that probably was what did it for LAG, because I think I've told the story on this podcast before that the first major that LAG won or their first and only major win ever was the first event that I didn't travel to ever. And so I always feel like when I don't watch or if I don't go, it must be good luck or something for LAG. So I guess it makes sense that I didn't get to watch any of the games. But then also the only other takeaway I have is just astounding to me how LAG is able to beat 100 Thieves every single time they play them. There's nothing that is more confounding to me in CDL than the ability of one team to just only be good against a single other team like that, where they have no business being that good. But yeah, I don't know. It's funny. They drew the perfect opponent in the second round for that to help seal their ability to make champs. But yeah, no, it was very interesting. But yeah, I don't want to speak too much on the gameplay from Major 4 because I didn't get to watch that much of it.
Yeah, I will say, one thing I will say just as we go on, the gameplay this year has been like really good, and again, it's improved in a lot of ways, not just from past years. This is all so much better than Vanguard. There is such clear, okay, we need to get this, and then you have pressure on it. Vanguard was just all over the place, just random, and to be fair, to some extent, so was not Cold War, Modern Warfare 2, less, but Modern Warfare 2 was really like, we're holding corners. That was really bad for that. This is a little bit better for, okay, we're not just holding corners all the time. But the gameplay, I really like the gameplay, and I've got a hands off to the developers on the maps. It's really funny. People were like, oh, Modern Warfare 3 is going to be amazing. We're getting all of the old Modern Warfare 2 maps, so it's going to be the best ever. And then we get these maps, and they're kind of like, you can't really play Terminal because it's not good, and okay, we can't play this map, can't play that map, and then we basically just ended up seeing Karachi a bunch of times, and we've definitely gone past that. 6-star, I think, probably one of my favorite maps in all of COD, honestly, right up there with Raid. It looks like these maps look amazing, they play amazing, especially Hardpoint. Search, yeah, but honestly, Hardpoint has been amazing. Every time there's a Hardpoint, I'm just like, all right, glued in. Let's watch what happens, right? Like, I don't have that with Search to some extent, Search, but for Hardpoint, it's much watch. I just love every single Hardpoint. Anyway, that's my take on the gameplay so far this year, and we still have more, so that's good. Here is the championship bracket, obviously, so we'll talk about the matchups in a second, but we got FaZe versus Heretics, and they will play, the winner of that will play the winner of Subliner Surge. Then Toronto Thieves, Optic LEG, they will play off in the winners. Again, no losers bracket here, no 4 teams in the losers bracket, so less matches than when you're watching this, but 2-3 weekends ago, depends on when you're watching this, but less matches than that. Obviously, championship, I believe championship Sunday, is it a best of 7 or is it a best of 9? I can't remember if they kept it 9.
It's a best of 9. Yeah. If you actually want to jump to the next slide. Yes. Yeah. So
there
this
we go.
Is just something I wanted to include. Yeah, this is important, and I think some people forget about this, and I forgot about it. I had to look it up to be sure, because I was like, Champs Final is also a best of 7, and then I looked last year, it was a best of 9, and I looked deep in the Call of Duty website, Call of Duty League website, and I saw, best of 9 again for the final. And if we remember last year, I think Toronto got slammed 0-5. That was not exciting at all. So hopefully this year is better. But the fact that it's a best of 9 does change things quite a bit when you talk about how you can win this thing. The big thing, right, is that hardpoint matters a lot less when you get to a best of 9. It still matters, but it's only 3 of the 9 game modes, so 33%, whereas in a typical series that goes the distance, right, hardpoint is 40% of the map. So that's a big drop-off. So search matters a little more, control matters a little more, and if you're the team that comes from winner's bracket, the veto advantages you have in a best of 9, I think, are far greater than what you have in a best of 7. You think about search and destroy, there are 5 maps for that. The team from winner's bracket will just veto whatever they don't want to play, and then the other 4 are in the map set for sure. Hardpoint, each team will still get 1 veto, so that doesn't change much. It's just the map that wouldn't be played in a typical best of 5 does get played at some point. And then the control veto is also huge as well, because you're playing it twice, so if you're the winner's bracket team, just like search and destroy, take out the one you don't want to play. That's a big deal. I did also include some numbers in terms of what your average win probability, like how it changes if you go from a typical best of 5 to a typical best of 9. So you can think about this, and these are all on my numbers, so they might be totally skewed one way or the other, but if you took Atlanta in a best of 5 against these other 7 teams, and you added up each win probability for each of those 7 matches, On average, Atlanta is a 81% favorite in those. Some of those, they're a 70% favorite if it's against a good team. Some of those, they're a 90% favorite if it's against the LAGs of the world. So that's how you can think about it. If you do the same exercise, but change it into a best of 9, you can see all of the good teams, right, those top 4 teams, get a bump, a significant bump up, and FaZe especially because they are so good at search compared to the rest of the field. And even LA Thieves get a little bump, according to my numbers, because they are such a good search team. And then, yeah, it gets harder to win a best of 9 when you're already a not-so-good team and you're lacking search and destroy power. So just wanted to make that note. It is a best of 9. It's going to be harder to win if you're a worse team, which intuitively makes sense. But, yeah, just something to think about. And, again, hopefully it's not a 5-0 sweep like last year.
Yeah. Or even, I think the year before was
5-1, I think.
It was 5-1. We've not had a good grand finals since.
Have we ever? I don't know.
Modern Warfare, maybe. I know. Blast for the Past. Dallas Empire won it. I think they won it 4-2, which actually might be the most competitive champs.
Yeah, that was a weird one though too, because Dallas. Was it Dallas? No, Atlanta? No, it was Dallas. Dallas started up 1-0 in that series. That's when they did the whole, the winner's bracket team just gets a free map win right away. But yeah, Atlanta made that somewhat interesting. But yeah, I don't know. The history of the Champs final has been not so good.
FaZe Ultra was 5-2 as well. But again, these are still, 5-2 is still not particularly competitive. It's only 7 of 9. Actually, fun fact about the original Champs, Empire versus Dallas for the original Modern Warfare. I had a bet, and it was Dallas Empire plus 1.5, and it was marked as a loss by my sportsbook. And I messaged them. I'm like, okay, they won. The spread was plus 1.5. It was 1.5 maps. The bet cashed, and they said, oh no, sometimes they can win but not cover the spread. I'm like, no, the spread was plus 1.5. You can't lose, you can't win and not get plus 1.5 maps. And then, okay, they checked it, but anyway, that was just a fun thing. But no, I agree. We've had a couple of competitive best of 9s in some of the grand finals, but for a major, but not for champs. I'm excited for a hopefully competitive one. I think if you got something like Subliners and FaZe again, that could potentially be competitive as well. FaZe Optic, I think one of those 4 will get in there, and then we'll have to see from there. Yeah. Okay. Beating the market and combine all the results from Major 4 for us. I went 0-3, had a horrible day 1. Did pull it back to the rest of the weekend. I had a good weekend, but that was not a particularly good Friday. Again, it's really hard when you only have 4 games you can bet on, though. And then you went 2-1, though. You FaZe to win, that did not work, but you did have the minus 300 FaZe to reach the final. And you did have Legion plus 1.5, minus 175 versus Seattle. So that was good. And then our combined model plays, Legion moneyline didn't work, but plus 1.5, map 1 and map 3 did all cash, and then Miami did not beat Thieves in the hard point, and then we didn't have any particular feature, so we did go plus to 1580. I was watching at home, obviously, because I'm in this, but if you were one of our viewers and you were watching at home, you realized that it ended on Friday. It was basically, I realized, I'm like, this is mathematically over, and it in fact was. So a little bit of anticlimactic there, because literally all of CDLMetrics teams got eliminated on Friday, with the exception of FaZe. But if all of my teams are still there and he has only one team, you're not going to be able to get that. Yeah, so I did pull off the first one. And yeah, this was really fun. And there was comebacks. And you can really clearly see how, yeah, you had the top 2 picks you nailed, but then it was just these guys right here. And specifically their placings in the last major there. That's really what tipped the balance there. And this was such a fun exercise. I can't wait to run this back next year. I really enjoyed the race to 1580 here, or 1580, and whatever it'll be called next year. There's like a 0% chance it'll be 1580 again, but it'll be some number that we figure out. But yeah, I'm excited to run this back. Yeah.
Yeah, first off, congratulations, Robert. That was, you pulled it out. I had a nice little lead going into this last set of qualifiers, and Optic just decided to forget how to play COD. And the other teams I had, not great. But if we go back, it is interesting to think about how we drafted these teams. Like, I was optimal through 2 picks, right? I took FaZe first overall. That was good. I got the last top 4 team in Optic, and they ended up as the 3 seed. Great. And then if you look at the other 4 teams I ended up picking were the 4 teams that all missed champs. And yeah, Boston was clearly the landmine that we didn't want to step on, but I took them with my 3rd pick, so that was dumb. But yeah, you made some good pivots. You took all the teams that made champs, and this didn't determine it per se, but your last pick, you were between LAG and Carolina, and I was very surprised you took LAG, but your thought process, I remember, was like, they are maybe more likely to make a roster move and catapult themselves up into being at least mediocre enough to make champs, and that proved to be true. Yeah, that was a big swing there as well, and yeah, just me picking Boston was... Someone had to, and I took him way too early. But yeah, still, congratulations nonetheless.
Thanks, yeah. And that is the thing, right? Because, like, how crazy is it that, it's again, 50 points, that would have been, like, if I had gone Carolina and had you not picked Boston, it would have been really close. We would have been down a point or 2 there. I'm basically a win or 2. And I think it's crazy that, like, me just saying, like, this team sucks, but when they suck, they're going to make a team change and then be better. That was, like, the tipping thing in the balance. So it's so sad that, like, you can't actually bet on, because there's no set regular season, you can't bet on, like, numbers of CDL points. Because if you could, that would be really fun to bet on. But unfortunately, no one's offering that kind of market on an NFL or a college football season win totals. So, but yeah, that was really fun, and just the process of thinking it through, and it really helps set the stage for the regular season. So yeah, I'm excited to do that again, hopefully next year. So yeah. Okay, match previews. Here we go. We've got the 4 matches for today, and then after that we'll do our kind of futures previews. Little bit of extra data coming at you for this week, because there is only just 4. We have some of the matches, the head-to-head matches here. So here is basically the comparison between Seattle and subliners. Basically, head-to-head, subliners are 3 and 175%. And let's see. Oh, so all maps. So they're 9 and 5 overall. 3 and 4 in hardpoint. So Seattle has actually beaten them in hardpoint, but subliners has swept them in search and destroy, and almost swept them in control. So there is some, basically, although subliners have struggled a little bit in hard point with Seattle, they have been pretty dominant in thing also. But to be fair, though, some of these were earlier when subliners were struggling with hard point, and that is definitely turned around now at this point. For the lines themselves, subliners minus 400 on the money line, minus 1.5, minus 163, 27.5 point favorites in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and then 1.5 round favorites in the control. Looking at our models, my model really likes subliners here. I think coming off of the major, I was surprised that this line was only minus 163 for the minus 1.5. But you can see where my model is like subliners. Like when you go 10 and 1 over the course of a major, especially against a lot of really good teams, my model is going to say, hey, they might be the best hardpoint team in the game, and that's exactly what they're saying for the hardpoint and the search there. A little cooler on the control because they did drop a couple of controls in the major, but yeah, overall, I'm a lot lower on Seattle. You're a tad more to market on Seattle, but you're also a bit lower on market in subliners. I will say I do like subliners here. We'll go first to you, CDLMetrics, and then to you, Doug. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this one is a little tricky. Obviously, New York just coming off of that Major 4 win. I do think that is worth writing down. Like, hey, let's not forget New York just won the last major. However, I think if there's any time to fade recency, it would be for Champs, right? We have a big break in between Major 4 and Champs. And this did burn me in the Vanguard season. I remember saying this exact same thing about LA Thieves. Let's not fall for it. They just won the last major. They're coming into Champs. They're the hot team, per se. And I was like, just don't take Thieves. And then they went on to win Champs. So that didn't work. So maybe it's not the smartest thing to fade the hottest team at the end of the year. But I do think that matters. I think this break in between Major 4 and Champs is a big deal. That saying, I do think New York are clear favorites in this match. Seattle Surge, very Jekyll and Hyde, up and down. We don't really know what we're going to get out of them. And this is worth knowing, like, Seattle Surge 1-3 head-to-head against New York. They are the only underdog that has a win against their first round opponent in this champs bracket. So I thought that was worth knowing at least. Yeah, Miami have not beaten FaZe, Thieves have not beaten Toronto, and LAG have not beaten Optic. So this is the one underdog where we have some history of them doing well. Just for that reason alone, it makes me a little nervous. I do think New York will come back down to earth a little bit in hardpoint. They obviously ran very hot in Major 4, and I think Seattle is a good enough opponent in hardpoint specifically where they could end that winning streak for New York. But fully expect New York to get through. I just think the series might drag on a little longer than expected for most. So, any thoughts on your end, Doug, about this matchup?
I tend to agree. It is an interesting thought about, like how the teams will be using this break that they have. I do wonder, because we have more events coming, like how that changes the quality of practice that the teams, especially the lower teams, get. I've traditionally thought of champs time as that the lower teams, like your 8 seed teams, get to play the top seeds more often in practice leading up to those games because the other teams aren't playing anymore. Like they're already imploded, getting new rosters or whatever for next season. So I do wonder how the quality of competition is, especially. But yeah, I think the thing that is tough for me is that, I think I see Seattle as a team that could take a hard point, but they're running against the team that is feeling the best at hard point right now. And you look at the head-to-head matchup too, that's where they have had success against New York, but I wouldn't be betting on them to have success now the way that New York has looked recently. So I think Seattle, in all honesty, probably draws a pretty tough matchup here in that respect, that like they match up maybe better against some of the other teams where I think they'd rather have Optic here probably. But so I'm a bit hesitant. I think that I would agree with Robert's take. I think New York probably comes out hot from the major and just rolls them over a little bit. If they can't win that map one hard point, I think we might see a quick one.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. It is funny though, because there is interesting parallels between subliners and Thieves last year. Obviously, Thieves last year went on to win champs, but with subliner.
2 years ago.
Yeah, not last year.
Oh, sorry, 2 years ago. Yes, sorry, 2 years ago with Vanguard. That's right. There's parallels between that, because subliners did not win. They didn't win the second last event last year, did they? No, that was FaZe.
No, I think they did.
Say.
I think, if my memory serves correct.
Okay.
I do think New York did the same thing where they won the last major, won champ. It's a trend now. Now I'm scared.
And apparently it was a trend during the CDL, like the before CDL era too. That was the before times, before I was part of this, but I'm sure Doug will remember that. There was quite a lot of that. I think the last event before the CDL era, it wasn't 100 Thieves, it was E United. They won the event before champs, and then they also won champs too. And I think people had been saying that was likely. But when I first saw,
I was at that game.
Yeah,
I was there at that game. I remember.
I will say that I remember back for Vanguard season, we were like, nope. That basically, although Thieves won the event right before champs, they were like plus 425. We're like, that's a horrible value. Don't bet that. It's bad. They immediately won that event, and they won it pretty handily. They beat FaZe twice in that event, and FaZe wasn't particularly close to them. I really fundamentally think that the subliners are like similar to that. Although maybe I don't necessarily love them to win the event, I think we could probably look at them at least in the first round for sure. Okay, I think Doug, did you find that data point? You're still looking for it?
It was who won Major 4 of last year, right?
Or was there 5 majors last year?
There were 5 majors last year.
Oh, okay.
New York won the last major and then went on to win champs. LA Thieves won the major before and then finished 7-8.
Okay, interesting. So the last 2 champs before this one were won by the team that won the last major. Interesting.
Yep.
All right, so moving on, winners round. So this is the next match: FaZe versus Heretics. FaZe is a 3-0 versus Heretics. How did they only play 3 times? That seems weird, but whatever. And all maps, they're 9-3. So basically, Heretics have been picking off maps from them, not full sweeps. 5-1 in the hard point, 2-1 in the search, 2-1 in the control. Again, very similar. This is very clearly, Heretic can pick off some maps, but not consistently from that as well. FaZe minus 900 on the money line, minus 2.5 for FaZe is shaded to the plus 110s. Heretics are favored to win a map, minus 150 for that. 32.5 point favorites in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and then 1.5 round favorites in the control. I don't hate Miami plus 2.5. I think I have it priced at 130, 140, something like that. I don't have it priced up to the minus 150, but I also don't like FaZe minus 2.5 either. There's that. The question though for me though is, okay, where would Miami punch through? I think it's search. I don't love Miami in the hard point. I do FaZe in the hard point just a little bit. I think they might be a little undervalued in the hard point, but outside of that, this just seems like a kind of open and closed book, right? This is FaZe. FaZe has looked dominant. They looked dominant in the major, except when they played literally just subliners. They're the same dominant team, and especially against non-top 4 teams. And you see that head-to-head record. CDLMetrics, do you see anything in this matchup that could change your opinion of how this goes, or are you just, which side do you fall on, the plus 2.5 or the minus 2.5 there?
Yeah. Oh, that's tough. My numbers seem to indicate that it's probably a better bet to take Miami plus 2.5. But yeah, I get a little nervous just even saying that. The one thing you have with Miami is they ended the season pretty well. They made winner's bracket pretty easily. They secured their spot in champs fairly easily. So they're playing good COD as of late, but FaZe are too, so that's a big problem. But going back to like their match history, yes, Heretics don't have a win in those 3 matches, but they did lose 3-1 each time, and each time it was different. One of those was a hard point win, one of those was a search win, and in the last series it was a control win. So they've shown that they can get it done, at least covering a 2.5 points or 2.5 map spread, I should say. But this kind of feels like the one where they might not, right? Like, now we're at champs, like Atlanta, it's no BS on their map veto process here. Like, I get very nervous trying to pick against FaZe in this spot here. So, yeah, for me, it's a total pass, but I guess I'll say Miami, get a map again. But yeah, it's probably map 1 or map 2. One of those will be the map pick by Miami. I think control is pretty much out of the question, even though they have a control win against FaZe. The discrepancy between FaZe and Miami in control is basically as big as it gets. Yeah, I think Miami have a shot if it's map 1 or map 2, but if they don't get either of those first 2, I think we're looking at a sweep for sure. But yeah, Doug, any other thoughts on this? Are you thinking Miami in this spot, get it done, or what?
Yeah, I think they pull it out. I do think it is interesting just looking at the stats here from, like, we're talking about what map Miami could win. I just like, yeah, obviously they beat FaZe in control. It'll be less than a month from the day that they play as their only map that they won. So I guess if you're asking what's the chance that they win the control conditional on that they win a map, I like that they won that control. They won they in their last 5 games, they've won the control in 4 of them. That's pretty, and that's against Seattle, Atlanta, 100T, and Optic, and then they lost to Toronto. So 4 out of their last 5 have been control wins against not slouches of teams. I think that's interesting from that perspective. That seems to be their one, like, bright spot as of late. But yeah, I tend to think, probably again agree with Robert, that it's probably the search. I don't know, anything can happen in search, but yeah, I don't know, I could see maybe a control map where, yeah, they sneak away with it. They seem to be fairly strong, but I honestly, I probably take the other side. I think Atlanta probably rolls through this. I don't think that, especially after a bad, not a bad loss, but yeah, I'd say a bad loss in the finals, like, I think Atlanta comes out and is just out for blood, and I think they probably try to get this one done as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah, I agree with that. Moving on to the third match here in the winner's bracket. FaZe Ultra versus Thieves. Ultra, a 3-0 against Thieves all year round. Again, I don't know how these teams have only played 3 times, but whatever. 8-3 head-to-head in maps. 5-0 Toronto in the hard point. That's a real dominance there. And to be fair, Thieves have not been the greatest in hardpoint. They've been not the greatest in hardpoint all year. However, though, Thieves 3-0 in getting it right back there. But then Ultra 3-0 in the control. So basically, this is basically saying that Ultra, in the 3-0s that Ultra's had, they have all been 3-1s that have gone, winning the hard point, winning the control, and winning the second hard point. That is literally every single time it goes the exact way. That's nuts. I'm not gonna lie. That's insane. That it's been that predictable. But yeah, that's cool. But actually, to be fair, if you remember, this is like when Thieves and Ultra do play, this actually usually is how it goes. It's usually Ultra wins the hard point. If you remember back to that, remember that blowout one where Ultra won the hard point 250-14 or something. Thieves immediately came back in that search, and then they won this control and then won the second hardpoint again. But anyways, for this specific game line, we've got Ultra minus 350, minus 175, minus 1.5, minus 175, 32.5 point favorites in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the control in the search, but that's shaded to plus 125, and then 1.5 round favorites in the control, and that's also shaded to plus 120 there as well. I am not the biggest fan of anything in this. I do Toronto in the hard point. I think they're worth a shot in the hard point just because I think I have some value. I only have 10 to 20 points of value, which isn't bad, but I don't like anything else in here really. I like the plus 1.5 on Thieves, but not by a ton. The problem is the fact that Ultra has been so weird and streaky, in the sense that they lose to LAG. Let's just talk about their major for a second, which basically perfectly encapsulates this. Lose to LAG immediately. Okay, then they fall to losers bracket. Then they start running through losers bracket until they get to subliners in the losers bracket final, immediately get 3-0 swept. And they'd also gotten 3-0 swept by LAG, I believe, too. Or was it 3-0 or 3-1? I can't remember. I think it was 3-0, right?
I think it was 3-0, yeah.
3-0.
Yeah, I think it was 3-0, yeah. This is like... It's this weird Jekyll and Hyde team. Are we going to get the dominant Ultra that won Major 1? Are we going to get this kind of, oh, okay, we are sometimes good, but sometimes not really good as well, right? This is the thing. My model thinks they're good at hardpoint, but sometimes there's cracks there. It definitely does not think they're good at search and destroy. CDLMetrics in my model, sorry. We're basically dead even with them on the search there. We basically are significantly lower than market there, probably closer to 50-50 on the search and destroy. And then we're both still a little lower on the thing. I can't endorse Ultra minus 1.5. Don't like that number. It's not a good number for me. I think I have this price probably closer to minus 130. And I actually have some slight value on Thieves plus 1.5. But I don't love that either because, again, and as we've seen, the data set is always hardpoint Ultra, search Thieves, control Ultra, and then the hardpoint back to Ultra again, the 3-1. Maybe this time breaks the pattern. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this Ultra team, and it's scaring me away from betting them, and it's also scaring me away from betting them in the futures market. What do you think, CDLMetrics?
Yeah, I see this pretty similarly to how you see this. If there's one way I'm going to play this, it's probably LA Thieves map 2. Thieves actually grade out as the second best search team by my numbers, and Toronto are right behind them. But if you're getting what I think should be the favorite at even money, that's some value, especially if map 2 is LA Thieves map pick, right? I think there's a high chance we get Rio Search and Destroy in this series. And if that comes on map 2, then I think LA Thieves at even money is fantastic. Because, I don't know, just the way Toronto play their search vetoes, they're really bad at high rise to a point where they are just auto-vetoing that, I think. And if that's the case, LA Thieves have Rio to choose. I think they have a big advantage on that map. I hate to say I think this plays out exactly like their other matches, but I think this plays out exactly like their other matches. LA Thieves should be favorites in map 2, especially if it's their pick. Toronto just have too much firepower in hardpoint. LA Thieves have one above average hardpoint map. The rest are pretty shaky. And you're going up against arguably the best hardpoint team in the game in Toronto. I think Toronto came on late in the season with their hardpoint. I know Major 4 wasn't ideal for them. Like losing to LAG in round 1 is not a great look. And then I believe they got swept by New York in lower bracket to be eliminated there. But I do think Ultra are a little sneaky now. Like they're the top 4 team that almost is being overlooked to a certain extent because we have FaZe, right? We know FaZe are like the prohibitive favorites. They're here all the time. New York just won Major 4. They're the hottest team right now. Optic is even being talked about more than Toronto because of how poor they've been. They crashed out of Major 4, there's drama within the team, yada, and that just kind of leaves Toronto as, oh yeah, they disappointed at Major 4, but they're still a good team, but I don't know. But I really do think Ultra are just a clear cut above Thieves. I would expect them to win this pretty comfortably, probably a 3-1, because that's what they do all the time, but the way it shapes out in this series, I think, is so clear, and that makes me nervous. But yeah, Toronto 3-1 it's just hard to see anything else unless Thieves can show something in hardpoint or maybe get a control win, which I think is possible. We just haven't seen it yet in this series. Yeah, any other thoughts on this one, Doug?
I think one thing I was just looking up, Robert, you said about the last 2 series that the teams have only played 3 times. I was surprised, like I was looking at the tweet that I'd made before the major started of the head-to-heads. There are a lot of matchups that have only happened twice all year. Like Atlanta's only played Vegas Legion twice the whole year. They had only played Seattle twice until they played at the major. Toronto's played Boston twice. Like I was surprised. Until you said that earlier. I didn't realize how many teams have only played twice. Carolina and Toronto have only played twice. It's just odd. It's funny that going into the major, Boston and Toronto had played each other twice, and they were split map count 3-3 and 1-1 in series, because that was the series that Boston 3-0'd Toronto earlier in the season. So they actually had a head-to-head tie if they had somehow tied in CDL points on the season, which is crazy to think that they'd only played each other one time all year long, or twice all year long. But yeah, for the series itself, I think I don't have a ton to add. I will say the one interesting thing that I found with this series is, and I guess with Toronto in general, is I feel like nowadays I've been doing a lot of my modeling and stuff just using like market implied strengths and stuff like that to make the simulations for the chances of teams to make champs, just because it makes for the best holistic view of what people should be what people expect, if we assume the market to be like a reflection of that, which I don't think is the case. But I do that a lot, and I do think that it's interesting the disconnect between these prices in this game and the odds that Toronto is getting to win the whole thing. Like, I would expect them to, given how strong they look in this matchup, I would expect the bookmakers to have Toronto as much more likely to win champs than this. So that's like an interesting little mismatch to look out for going forward. Obviously, I can only know, I have all the data that I've used, like that for all the games that Toronto's played throughout the season, and I can only predict what the bookmakers would set the lines for the upcoming games if in this simulated champ scenario. But like, any way that I look at it, it feels like, given these lines, if you use these lines as like fact, they should be much more likely to win champs and to make the finals than what the bookmakers are giving them credit for. So that's definitely, this is the most interesting one. And I definitely I put some money on Toronto to win just because of that. Like, it seems to be incongruous, but yeah, I don't know, it's just like an interesting factoid than anything. It's not, I think Toronto will win this series, but yeah, it's more just I'm interested to see how this plays out, as if they win, like what will they look like what will the bookmakers give them in their next game. I'm very interested to see.
All right, last match for the first round of champs, LAG versus Optic. Optic is only 2-0. They've only played twice, as Doug was saying. A lot of these teams have only played twice. Optic 2-0 against LAG, 5-2 overall in maps, 2-1 in hardpoint, 2-0 in search, and then 1-1 in the control. So then I think that's basically, I think one of them was a 3-0 and then one of them was a 3...
Yeah, one thing I just want to point out with these, I did exclude maps that aren't played anymore, so Optic must have picked up a win on a terminal hardpoint or something.
I was trying to figure out in the last series that what was...
So I cleared out those maps, because I don't really care about those anymore, but yeah. Doesn't make sense.
That makes sense. That makes more sense now. Yeah, that's why that math makes sense. Okay, the odds for this match are, so this is either the best built line or the worst line. I'm not completely sure. We'll talk about this in a second. Optic minus 400, minus 200 on the minus 1.5. 42.5 point favorites in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and then 1.5 round favorites in the control. It really depends on what Optic we're going to get here, right? My model has a lot of faith in LAG here, but there's reasons why. My model is definitely more biased by recency. So yeah, my model of course is going to find a lot of value in LAG, but at the same time, Optic, they have been a better team all year. They seem to be doing some stuff to turn around. They've apparently brought accuracy in as a coach. Apparently you could do that. I guess contracts don't mean anything or whatever, but he's a coach now, so cool. I don't know. I definitely cannot bring myself to bet Optic minus 1.5, minus 200. But at the same time, either LAG plus 1.5 at plus 150 is the easiest bet of the year, or just the worst bet ever, and I don't know which one it is. It's one or the other. It's not. There's no in between where it's it was close to a game 4. This is either the book's just leaving $100 bill on the table, or it's like the best line that's ever been designed. I don't know. Again, unfortunately for Call of Duty, we don't get, like, sometimes with stuff like the NFL or college football, the bookies will come out and say, oh, a lot of action has been on this. I'd love to know where the money is. I suspect the money is on Optic, but I'm not 100% sure on that, though. But we'll go to you, CDLMetrics. What do you see here? Is this the best line? Is this like a horrible line, or is this like a really well built line here?
I think the line is about right. Like I really don't think as a bookmaker you could put Optic's price much lower cuz I would just be nervous. Optic money is going to come in even though they're not doing well. But at least to me, my numbers seem to indicate that there is some value on Optic here, and I do agree with that. And I've been saying this for weeks now, and it has not worked out. A lot of their disappointing results lately have been a surprise. I think some of it is still bad luck, but some of it is definitely their search and destroy has gotten a little worse. And maybe accuracy coming in can help clear that up. But you look at their hard point numbers, you look at their control numbers, like those really haven't tailed off too much, but their search clearly has. And I know Doug mentions it quite a bit, like search can be fluky at times. And the fact that Optic are running really cold in search right now, at least, to me signals that will turn around at some point. And if their hardpoint and control is still pretty good, which I think it is, then I think we could quickly see this Optic team bounce back. Well, another thing to play into this is also congrats on the third place finish. Fantastic job qualifying for champs. No one saw that coming. If you zoom out, and I mentioned this after the very first, major placements can be fluky as well. The fact that LAG got third is good. Someone has to get third place, but if you zoom out, you go, okay, LAG, what did they do? They were 2-2 match records. Now, they played some tough opponents. They beat Toronto in round 1. That's very impressive. They swept LA Thieves in round 2. That's another champs team, right? They're no slouch. They're no Boston Breach. And then they come out on Sunday, they get swept by FaZe, they get swept by Subliners, and you go, oh yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. Did we really expect them to beat both of those teams, if not one? No, they showed their true colors on Sunday. But because they got a nice run and won their first 2 matches, that guarantees you a top 3 finish. You zoom out, it's a 2-2 match record, it's a 6-7 map count. At the end of the day, you're happy about the third place finish, you're happy about qualifying for champs. You're happy you got the 6th seed and you get to play Optic Texas, who look not so good right now. But those storylines to me are just shrinking the price on what this match probably should be. So the one way I'd like to play it would either be Optic are fully back, right, and you take them to sweep this even at a much better price, or you take them huge, whatever the spread is in map 1, it's 42 and a half. Like, that is big, but their hard point hasn't tailed off that much. I don't know. I'm a sucker for Optic, I guess. That's the conclusion here, but I just would be really shocked if Optic come out at champs, which is in their backyard, and just fall on their face against what I think is clearly the worst team that qualified for champs. That's where I'll leave it, and I hate to bash on LAG with Doug here, but Doug, do you have any thoughts on this very intriguing matchup?
See, as an LEG fan, I think it's like the same in all sports. As a fan of any team, that team can do nothing right. They're the worst, and we love to hate our favorite teams or whatever. So I think it's fine. Yeah, I think. Yeah, my personal read, I think what you said is, or what both of you says, it's just really tough. It's just really hard. You're basically, does recency matter a lot? Okay, it does. Okay, well, then LAG, yeah, this is the smartest line ever built. Does recency not really matter that much? And is Texas like a far stronger team than LAG? If that's true, then yeah, I definitely want some Texas here because, yeah, LAG is by far the weakest team in the bracket. It is really tough. I tend to think that LAG is the weakest team. I think that, yeah, they drew a really, not easy path, but like they didn't have to show very much in their path to finish as well as they did. Yeah, they went out with a whimper they looked really strong on day 1 and day 3, I guess it was, but like they went out with a whimper after that. And so I don't know, I'm very reluctant to bet big on LAG here. I think, yeah, I don't know, I was surprised to see get just like basically not even money, but yeah, like getting even odds on Texas to win the second map, that just seems, yeah, I don't know, that seems very presumptuous that, yeah, Optic isn't going to improve anything between now and then. And yeah, I think the home field advantage thing is potentially real as well. Yeah, I know every event is a home field advantage for Optic in general, but yeah, I've been to Texas events before. It is definitely a different atmosphere. It definitely feels like they're playing at home there. They definitely have more fans in like the Arlington, Dallas, Fort Worth area than anywhere else, I would imagine. So yeah, I tend to lean the way that Texas is. Yeah, they've looked really bad, but come on, they're not gonna they're not gonna do that at Champs. And then yeah, LAG is gonna come out and look good, and then I don't care because that'll be the best possible thing that could happen. I look smart one way, or I'm happy the other way. That's the perfect bet. I was trying to look. Yeah, maybe I'll bring it up if I see it later. But I track like the line movement over time. I'm curious to see how this line has moved over time. I'm not really sure. I haven't been keeping close enough eye on it. But yeah, I do wonder. Ryan, you mentioned, is Texas money going to move this around from when like where bookmakers thought it was originally? We do see that fairly often, so I was going to look it up. But yeah, maybe I'll chime in later if I see something.
I agree. Like, this is the thing. I have not bet anything on this game yet, although my model has pretty much insane value on LEG. I have not touched it. I think for one main reason is because LEG went into Sunday in the winners bracket. They went 0-3 to they went 0-3 down to FaZe, and they went 0-3 to subliners. Now, both those teams were riding high. Both those teams, very arguable, are the two best teams in the league. But that's not a particularly great showing. That's not convincing me that LEG is one of the top teams. That's me kind of thinking maybe they're a tad more fluky. On the getting there was on the fluky side. They may have gotten lucky against Toronto. A 3-0 against Toronto is very lucky. And then all they had to do was just beat who was it? Who did they beat in the Thieves. It was Thieves, right? Yeah, they got to beat Thieves, another not great team, right? They got that, and then they go to and they basically don't win a single map after they beat Thieves, right? That is a little concerning to me, and I think although my model can't price in Optic improving or figuring out what the problem was, I think I'm not betting Optic minus 1.5. But I think I'm not gonna also bet LAG plus 1.5. I don't think I can. If this line got up to plus 175, I'll think about it. If there's more money coming in on Optic and this gets up to minus 250, okay, I'll think about it. But at this point, I can't bring myself to bet that. That being said, though, there could be maybe some value on the search and the hard point, though, maybe. But accuracy's influence should fix that too. So I don't know. Search and control, but we'll see. Moving on, futures previews. For the teams, again, obviously the bottom four have been eliminated. FaZe plus 150 to win outright, subliners plus 225, Ultra plus 400, Optic plus 450, and then you get to the long shots. 2800, 28 to 1, 33 to 1, 51, 66 to 1. To reach the final, FaZe almost a minus 200 to reach the final. Subliners basically even at minus 110. Ultra plus 150, Optic plus 200, Thieves 750, Surge 1000, 10 to 1, Heretic 16 to 1, and LAG 33 to 1. In terms of that, I don't have a major model. I took a step away back from that this year. I hope I'll be able to build one for next year. But Doug does actually have his own major model here, so he's putting his numbers up here too. I'll just quickly recap and then I'll hand it off to you two to talk about that. But again, obviously market odds, there are the standard team colors. CDL is in gray, Doug's in darker gray. Shout out to people who are colorblind there, but that's okay. But yeah, basically CDLMetrics absolutely loves FaZe. This is to win, right?
Yes.
Yes, to win. Yeah, to win. CDLMetrics loves FaZe, and then just that gap just gets sucked away from everybody else. Definitely likes Ultra and Texas a bit less than the market there, but definitely likes them as the number 2 and 3 rather than the subliners there. So moving subliners down, discounting their major 4 performance, and then yeah, these are not real numbers here. Doug, on the other hand, much more in line with FaZe, but still higher on than the books on FaZe themselves. Much higher on Ultra and Optic. Not as high on Optic as the books, but higher than Ultra on the books, but also significantly lower on subliners. Again, discounting the most recent performance. First to you, CDLMetrics. Why does your model love FaZe so much?
Because it's loved them all year. Yeah, I find it hard to argue that there's another team better than them. And to me, this is more about Like, my numbers on them to win this tournament compared to Major 4 are basically the same. I was in the high 50s for them. I believe I'm at like 58, 59% for them to win this tournament here. So their showing at Major 4 didn't really sway me either way. They didn't win it, obviously, but they got to the final. They were up 2-1. They were the only team to beat New York that weekend. Don't forget they swept them. And if you really think about it, they actually out-mapped New York, right? If you think about a sweep versus a 4-2 loss, that's more maps in favor of FaZe. So again, I do think it's a little bit of bad luck, right? Your FaZe, you only lose once all weekend, and rather than going down to lower bracket, the tournament just ends. That's how the structure works. But the odds shift from Major 4 to here is drastic. And I was just looking back on what I took at Major 4. I had FaZe to win outright, and that at the time was minus 110. And to me, if that was the price on this, it would still be value, but the market has dropped that 12 percentage points down to plus 150. To me, that's a huge drop for a team that didn't crash out by any means and actually looked pretty good against the team that won the tournament. So that is a big shift to go from plus 150 now, what was minus 110. The other teams, I don't know, New York, they're obviously the talk of the town because of their Major 4 performance, and maybe I need to factor in recency more in my numbers because to me they have the fourth best odds of those top 4 teams. But again, part of that is New York very likely to run into Atlanta FaZe in round 2 if both of these teams win, and that's just a tough draw. You'd much rather face Optic or Toronto in your round 2 game rather than FaZe, right? The whole thing is let's avoid FaZe for as long as we can. At least to me, that's the narrative that you're trying to spin here. So it's tough. I'm not quite there on Toronto, but I could be talked into it. Optic is a tricky one as well, just because of how they've fared. But both of those teams at least aren't on the same side of the bracket as FaZe, and I do think that means a lot. That's where I'm at on the odds to win champs. I just think the shift in the market is a little too much for me, and I would be surprised. I really would be surprised if the line closes FaZe at plus 150 to win outright, just because it's such a big shift for a team that looked pretty good just 2 weekends ago. They didn't win, but they still look pretty good. But Doug, any thoughts on your futures prices here?
It is interesting that when you put it sequencing at its finest there for FaZe in terms of the maps. I think that can make a big difference, especially when we're talking about in the span of a couple days, them winning overall map count against a team like New York but losing the finals. Like, I do wonder, I don't know what the line was on New York, like what the money line was on New York to beat Atlanta in the finals going into that game. But I just would want to take a step back and just wonder how much that would have changed just given what we saw in the finals. I don't know. Obviously New York looked a lot stronger on the last day than they did on the first day in Hardpoint. And I will say there's something to be said for when I look at recency in my models for by mode, Hardpoint is the mode that you see the strongest recency, not biased, but the strength of those results being the most important, just because we get the most signal from a mode where you score a lot more points and it's not so round based. But I don't know. Obviously my numbers speak for themselves a little bit. From where I was 2 weeks ago to now, I'm not thinking New York is somehow proven that they're definitely the clear, far and away number 2 best team or anything like that. I think Toronto is still stronger. It's funny because I use the bookmaker odds as part of my models now in some of these simulations, and so I don't know, again with bookmaker contradiction, you can't love New York and also not think New York is that strong against each of their opponents that they play against. They didn't love them that much against Atlanta 2 weeks ago. What's to make me think that they're going to be amazing this week? But I think in general, I think your point about FaZe is very interesting though. I think when we go to, I'm assuming that the next slide is about chance to reach the finals. Maybe if you want to go to that one, I was going to make, I'll start since I had an interesting thought while we were just talking about this, about reaching the finals. Atlanta FaZe's chance paths to reach the finals are very interesting to me. We talk about their potential paths. They draw Miami in the first round, but then they're going to be playing New York theoretically in the second round if both of those games go the way that we want, which is, I'd say, probably objectively the or at least what the bookmakers are saying is the hardest path that they could have, the hardest opponent that they could draw in the earliest round. And then if they were to lose that game, for instance, they'd be playing they'd flip to the other side of the bracket. So you're more likely to run into a team like 100T down there, or I guess we could say, yeah, I think like 100T is an interesting team to draw there. I don't know. I was just, when I was looking at this, I think it's interesting the paths for Atlanta if they don't just win their first two series easily. And yeah, it seems to be a bit contradictory with the way that the books have priced New York. But yeah, Robert, why don't you have any thoughts on just like these odds here?
No, if multiple teams are minus to make it to something, especially if make it to the finals, I'm not touching that market. That's just way too much juice in that market. That's the thing. Or just way too much vig in that market. I'm not touching that. If I had to place a bet, gun to your head, I think it'd be New York, just because I'll take that momentum. I think Texas could improve, but they're still, even if they were to improve, I don't think they get to where they need to be. But outside of that, I don't really want to touch anything. I don't see, just based on what the odds are, I don't see a ton of value on anything in here outside of maybe New York, but that's more just an emotional play, to be honest with you. There's not a ton of numbers I have saying New York's going to win or there's value on this. If you just pencil in that basically more recent momentum, more recency bias, you get something where it's okay, New York could be good maybe, and I think that's it. I think, but honestly, I don't even like that. If it was 3 or 4 to 1, I'd say sure, but at +2 something, I'm not touching that. No.
One thing I want to point out with these odds to reach the finals, and again, I want to bring it back to FaZe because I'm a FaZe fanboy apparently, but a few weekends ago, FaZe, and I took them, and it cashed. FaZe were -300 to reach the final at Major 4, and they did very easily. Like, part of that is they got LAG in the winners final. That was a gift to some extent, but they made it through subliners, right? They made it through round 2. They got to the final. They were -300. That cashed. Now it's -188, which is a pretty big drop. That's about a 10% drop in probability in what I would argue is maybe an easier tournament to reach the final in. If you lose right away, let's say FaZe lose to Miami in round 1 very unexpectedly, you don't have to win 5 straight to make the final. Now you only have to win 4 straight. So I just don't understand the shift in those prices that much. FaZe made the final in 3 out of the 4 tournaments. My numbers seem to indicate a 75-ish% chance they make the final. So I'm really confident in that number with FaZe. I just don't understand the drastic market shift down on them just because they lost that Major 4 final. I get that they've choked away some of those over the last couple years, and maybe that sour taste is ruining their prices, but I'll scoop that up every day of the week. And then again, just going back to Toronto and Texas, if you can avoid FaZe for as long as possible, that is good. And heck, maybe New York can even take out FaZe in a round 2 matchup. I would still think that's a nice way to play it through rather than subliners. But I get it. If subliners continue this, the hot team just stays hot and goes on a run at champs, then maybe that is something to consider moving forward. But yeah, hard to make an argument for the Thieves, Surge, Heretics, and Gorillas of the world, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, beating the market and combined model plays. Here is our plays. I actually do FaZe in the hard point against Miami. I really do like subliners -1.5 there versus Seattle, and also give me the subliner spread. A large part of the reason why I do like the subliners so much against Seattle is because I really do like them in the hard point, so I'll take that as well. Metrics, you've got FaZe to win champs +150, you've got Optic to reach the final at +200, and you've got Ultra to reach the final at +150. So playing all 3 sides there. It's I'll play the what's the quote? I play both sides, so no matter which side wins, I come out ahead.
That's kind of the thought.
Yeah.
The thing that would kill me is a complete just replay of what we just saw, right? Subliners beat FaZe in the grand finals. That would be horrible. But yeah, if Atlanta win, and it's Optic or Toronto, that would be awesome. Or if it's just Optic versus Toronto in the final, I think that would be nice as well. I'm just playing anti-subliners, but I don't hate what you did taking them in that first round matchup versus Surge. I do think they make a lot of sense there, especially if you like them in hardpoint.
Mm. And Doug, of course, you also have Ultra to reach the final. You have Optic in Search against LAG. Tad bit scary considering what Optic has, or rather hasn't done in Search recently. And then you also have FaZe minus 32.5 versus Miami in the hardpoint as well. Joining me on that one as well. Any thoughts on those bets?
Yeah, I think we've talked about the first two, or I guess I touched a little on the second one already. But yeah, I just think, yeah, I don't know. My BS detector is telling me that Optic is just a different caliber team than LAG is, and so anytime they're getting the same odds as LAG to win a map, I'm skeptical of that. But yeah, obviously I see the danger in it, and then yeah, I do think that like Atlanta's just, I think that the spread is just, I think that they've got Miami's number in hardpoint. I don't really see Miami winning the hardpoint, and I don't think that it will be particularly close. But yeah, I think we've touched on Toronto a fair bit at this point.
Yeah. And our combined model plays LA Thieves map 2 versus Toronto, so take Thieves in the Search. FaZe to win outright, and Toronto to reach the final. That's what both CDL and Doug's models. Next pod. So this one's going to be fascinating. Esports World Cup preview. I've actually been watching. I watched the League of Legends Esports World Cup tournament. Are you guys familiar with how the trophies work?
Not at all.
Nope.
So what happens is every team gets their own little triangle. It's like a little gold triangle like this, and it has, I think, it has like the names of all the players on the team on parts of the triangle. And what happens is, if when you lose, you give your triangle to the team that wins, and then what happens is your triangle then gets destroyed by a hydraulic press, shattered into little pieces. And then when you win the event, you get to take pieces of other people's, they're called keys. The triangles are called keys. You get to take pieces of that, and you get to encase them in resin to make your trophy. So you're basically like sprinkling them in, and it gets coated in resin for your own trophy.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, that is very elaborate. Whoever thought of that? Good on them.
Shout out to the Saudis for good trophy design there. But yeah, no, it's really cool. It's a really cool thing. The League of Legends tournament was definitely lacking. It was only a single elimination tournament, no group play. I think Riot want to focus on their own. They want their own tournaments to have a higher level, so they're just like, let's just keep this a bit down. But the Call of Duty tournament, not toned down in any way. That Call of Duty tournament is fire. That tournament is arguably, it's not really arguably, it's a better format than Champs. Straight up, it's not even a question. Yeah, I'm excited for that one. That one will be fascinating because, one, I suspect we've already heard confirmation that some teams are going to make team changes before Esports World Cup as well. Some have already confirmed. Is the Subliners competing in the Esports World Cup? Is it Cloud9? I don't know. I have no idea at this point. There's a lot that is going to be really exciting for this Esports World Cup. That is a couple more weeks away. It's probably about a month or so away. We will be here for that, and that might be a great intro for some of the stuff next season. Some of the off-season stuff might have happened by then. I have no idea. We might even have some more CDL announcements by then. I have no idea. So stay tuned. We're not going anywhere, not for Call of Duty yet. Also, this channel is going to be doing college football stuff, so if you're interested in that, obviously stick around for that. But this is not it for us for this year. We are going to be back, and we're going to be doing Esports World Cup pod, and that will be coming at you before the Esports World Cup. But that tournament actually is pretty exciting. But before that, we have Champs next weekend. We're recording this on the Wednesday the 10th, so the Champs is next weekend. Until then, everybody have a great Champs. This is the final official tournament of the year. Enjoy Champs. This is the last Activision tournament of the year. The Call of Duty League champion for 2023 will be crowned. Actually, I guess 2024 will be crowned this year, next weekend. And yeah, enjoy it, and good luck to everybody, and we'll see you guys around. See you, everybody.